I sit here staring at my phone, reading yet another guilt-tripping message from my mother about how I should give my half-sister one of my apartments. The audacity of her request doesn't surprise me anymore. No matter how many times I block her number, she finds new ways to reach me. Text messages, emails, even comments on social media, all demanding the same thing. To understand why I'm so adamant in my refusal, we need to go back 20 years. I was 6 when my world fell apart. Mom sat me down one evening in our living room, her face oddly calm as she twisted her wedding ring, and told me she'd fallen in love with someone else. Dad was moving out. I remember watching him pack his things, while Mom hovered impatiently by the door, checking her watch every few minutes. Mom didn't waste any time. The ink was barely dry on the divorce papers when she married Steve, and he moved into our house. Everything changed overnight. My princess drawings disappeared from the fridge, replaced by Steve's work schedule. My favorite cereal vanished from the pantry because Steve preferred healthy breakfast options. It was like someone had taken my home and rearranged everything just slightly wrong. Dad sent regular alimony checks and tried to see me when he could, but his business kept him busy. Our visits grew shorter and less frequent, always interrupted by urgent phone calls about meetings and deals. Then, when I was 8, my half-sister arrived. I still remember standing in the hospital hallway, watching through the glass as Mom cradled her new baby, with Steve beaming beside them. That was the moment I became invisible in my own home. They named her Lisa, and suddenly, everything revolved around her schedule, her needs, her wants. "Rachel, keep it down," became Mom's favorite phrase. "The baby's sleeping." "Rachel, go to your room," Steve would say. "Your mother needs to focus on the baby." "Rachel, we can't help with your homework right now." "Lisa has a fever." "Rachel, eat dinner in your room tonight." "Lisa's fussy and needs quiet." I grew up with a roof over my head and food on my plate, but love and warmth were luxuries I didn't get to experience. My bedroom became my sanctuary and my prison. I'd spend hours there, doing homework, reading books, or just staring at the ceiling, trying to make myself as small and quiet as possible. Steve made no secret of his dislike for me. He'd sigh heavily whenever I entered a room, or mutter under his breath about baggage from the past. Late at night, I'd hear them talking through the thin walls of my bedroom, their voices carrying clearly in the quiet house. "She should be living with her father," Steve would say. "She doesn't belong here. Look how she mopes around the house. She's making Lisa uncomfortable." "We can't send her away," Mom would reply in a harsh whisper. "Mark's alimony is too important. We need that money. Have you seen how much Lisa's dance classes cost? Besides, the mortgage." Those whispered conversations taught me everything I needed to know about my place in this family. I wasn't a daughter, I was a paycheck. A means to an end. A necessary inconvenience they tolerated for the monthly deposits my father made into their account. Every time I heard them talk like that, a little piece of my heart would harden, building up walls that would eventually become impenetrable. As I grew older, the distance between me and my mother's family grew into a canyon. Every summer vacation became a stark reminder of where I stood in their hierarchy. While they packed their bags for beach resorts and theme parks, I'd be shuttled off to Dad's place like an afterthought. "We just can't afford an extra ticket, Rachel," Mom would say, not quite meeting my eyes. "But you'll have fun with your father, won't you?" The truth was, I did have fun with Dad, even though our time together was punctuated by business calls and urgent meetings. He'd sit with me during breakfast, his phone constantly buzzing, looking at me with guilty eyes. "I'm sorry, Princess," he'd say for the 100th time. "The business is really taking off, and I need to be available. But look what I got you." And out would come the latest iPhone, or a new laptop, or the newest gaming console. I remember the day he gave me my first MacBook. His eyes lit up watching me open it. "This is for all those weekends I had to cancel," he said. "I know it doesn't make up for it, but..." "It's perfect, Dad," I told him, and I meant it. Not because of the expensive gift, but because of how his face brightened when I hugged him. But my happiness would always be short-lived. The moment I returned home with any new gadget, the storm would begin. "A MacBook?" Lisa would screech, her face turning red. "That's not fair. I want one too." She'd stomp her feet, tears streaming down her face, even though she was 8 years younger and barely knew how to use a computer. "Look what you've started," Mom would hiss at me, while Steve stood in the corner, arms crossed, glaring as if I'd committed a crime. The pattern was always the same. Lisa would throw a tantrum, Mom and Steve would pace around anxiously, and within a week, they'd cave and buy her the same thing. It didn't matter if she was too young for it or didn't need it, she had to have exactly what I had. One particularly bad episode involved an iPad Pro. Lisa's meltdown lasted 3 days straight. "I hate you," she screamed at me. "You always get better stuff. It's not fair." Mom finally snapped. I overheard her angry phone call to Dad that evening. "Mark, this has to stop," she demanded. "These expensive gifts are causing problems in my household. Lisa gets upset, and we can't afford to keep matching your presents. Either buy something for both girls or don't buy anything at all." The next weekend, Dad picked me up looking more serious than usual. We drove to our favorite diner, and over chocolate milkshakes, he broke the news. "Rachel, honey," he started, "your mom called me about the gifts." My heart sank. "I'm sorry, Dad. I don't mean to cause trouble." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No, you haven't done anything wrong. But I think we need to be smarter about this. I won't be giving you any more expensive gadgets." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment, but then he smiled. Instead, he continued, lowering his voice, "I've opened a college fund for you. By the time you graduate high school, you'll be able to go to any university you want." My eyes widened. "Really? Really? But this has to be our secret, okay? Don't tell your mom or anyone else. This is just between us." I nodded eagerly, feeling for the first time like I had something truly mine, a future that nobody could take away or demand to share. The day I graduated high school should have been filled with celebration. Instead, just a week later, I found myself sitting at our dining table, pushing food around my plate while Mom cleared her throat. "Rachel," she said, setting down her fork. "Now that you've graduated, we need to discuss something important." I already knew what was coming. The way she'd been eyeing my room lately, the whispered conversations with Steve, it wasn't hard to guess. "Lisa needs her own space now that she's 10, Mom continued. "She's growing up, and your room would be perfect for her. It's time for you to move out." Steve nodded vigorously beside her, while Lisa bounced in her chair with excitement. I kept my face neutral, took a sip of water, and said, "Actually, I was planning to leave anyway. I'm going to college in the fall." Mom's eyebrows shot up. "College? We can't afford that, Rachel. You know our financial situation." "Dad's paying for it," I replied, watching their faces transform. The relief that washed over them was almost comical. Steve's shoulders relaxed, and Mom's tight smile loosened. "Oh," she said. "Well, that's good then." I spent the next day packing my life into boxes. The walls of my room, already bare from years of not being allowed to put up posters, "It'll damage the paint, Rachel," seemed to close in on me. Through the thin walls, I could hear Mom and Steve talking in their bedroom. Finally, Steve was saying, his voice gleeful, "No more dealing with Mark's daughter. And the alimony payments will stop too." "I know," Mom replied. "I was worried we'd have to keep her around longer." This worked out perfectly. Their words should have hurt, but I felt nothing but relief. 2 days later, I loaded the last box into Dad's car. Dad had taken a whole week off work, the first vacation he'd had in years, and surprised me with tickets to Hawaii. As our plane took off, I watched my hometown disappear beneath the clouds, feeling lighter with each mile we put between us and that house. "I thought we could use some father-daughter time before college starts," he said, squeezing my hand. For the first time in years, his phone stayed off. We spent our days on the beach, trying to surf, badly, eating at local restaurants, and talking, really talking, about everything and nothing. In the evenings, we'd sit on our hotel balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors I'd never seen back home. One night, as we watched the waves crash against the shore, Dad turned to me. "I'm sorry it took me so long to do this," he said quietly. I leaned my head against his shoulder, breathing in the salt air and the faint scent of his aftershave. "You're here now," I replied. "That's what matters." College felt like breathing fresh air after years of suffocation. I moved into my dorm room that fall, armed with determination and the knowledge that Dad had my back. But I wanted to stand on my own feet too, so I got a job at the campus cafe, the Daily Grind. "Rachel, you don't have to work," Dad insisted during one of our calls. "I can send you a monthly allowance." "I know, Dad, but I want to," I replied, balancing my phone while wiping down tables. "It feels good earning my own money." Between classes, study sessions, and work shifts, I built a life that was entirely my own. My coworkers became friends, my professors became mentors, and slowly, the weight of my past began to lift. I loved the rhythm of my new life: early morning study sessions before my first class, afternoon shifts at the cafe, and late nights in the library with my study group. Dad's business was booming, and he bought a beautiful house in a quiet suburb. During holidays, I'd stay with him, marveling at how peaceful life could be. We'd spend evenings in his home theater or by the pool, and he'd tell me about his plans for the company's expansion. "I have something special planned for when you graduate," he'd say with a mysterious smile. "Dad, paying for my college is already more than enough," I'd protest, but he'd just shake his head and change the subject. Every time I visited, the house felt more like home. I had my own room there, decorated exactly how I wanted it, something I'd never been allowed in my mother's house. Dad even gave me a key, telling me I could come anytime, even when he was away on business trips. Meanwhile, my mother's world continued spinning without me in it. Her social media was a shrine to Lisa: dance recitals, school events, family vacations. Sometimes, relatives would comment on her posts. "How's Rachel doing? Haven't seen her in ages." Mom's replies were always the same: "Oh, she's doing well, living her adult life." As if I was some distant acquaintance she'd lost touch with, not her firstborn daughter. She had no idea I was making Dean's List every semester. Didn't know I'd been promoted to shift supervisor at the cafe. Couldn't tell you what I was majoring in or who my friends were. My life had become a fill-in-the-blank space in her story, and she seemed perfectly content to leave it empty. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of the opportunity Dad had given me. Between classes and work, I joined the business club and even started tutoring younger students in economics. My professors started talking about graduate school possibilities, and for the first time, I could see a clear path forward for my life. One day, scrolling through my feed, I saw a photo of Lisa's 12th birthday party. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, and Mom had tagged every relative except me. "Our little princess is growing up so fast," the caption read, followed by a dozen heart emojis. I stared at the image for a long moment, then closed the app. That night, as I locked up the cafe, I realized I didn't feel the ache I expected. Instead, I felt light, unburdened, like I'd finally put down a heavy bag I'd been carrying for years. Graduation day was bright and sunny. I spotted Dad in the crowd immediately. He was the one cheering the loudest when they called my name. After the ceremony, while families took photos and celebrated, he pulled me aside with a mysterious smile. "Close your eyes and hold out your hands," he said. I felt something metal drop into my palm. Opening my eyes, I saw a set of keys with a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked, opening the envelope to find an address. "Your graduation present. An apartment in your name, back in hometown. Fully furnished and ready for you to move in." I burst into tears, throwing my arms around him. "Dad, this is too much." "Nothing's too much for my little girl," he said, hugging me tight. The apartment was perfect, modern, spacious, in a quiet neighborhood. I found a job at a local marketing firm, settled into a comfortable routine, and rarely thought about my mother's family anymore. Life was good, simple, peaceful. Then came the phone call that changed everything. The tests came back positive, Dad said, his voice unusually quiet. It's stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The next 2 years became a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and desperate searches for experimental treatments. I watched my strong, vibrant father grow weaker day by day. He fought hard, we both did, but cancer doesn't fight fair. On a rainy Tuesday morning, holding my hand, he took his last breath. He was just 54. I handled the funeral arrangements in a daze. Posted about it on social media, tagging Mom out of obligation more than hope. Her response came hours later. Sorry, but I'm too busy to attend my ex-husband's funeral. Lisa has a dance recital that day. Even in my grief, I couldn't say I was surprised. The reading of the will left me speechless. Dad had left me everything, his company, the house, several investment properties. His lawyer handed me a letter. Dear Rachel, I built all this for you, princess. I'm sorry I can't be there to see what you'll do with it, but I know it'll be something amazing. Take care of yourself first, then others if you can. Love, Dad. I hired Marcus Chen, Dad's trusted VP, to run the company as CEO. He had the experience I lacked, and I knew Dad would approve. Meanwhile, I found my own way to honor his memory, establishing a foundation to help cancer patients and their families. The day we launched the foundation, I stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. No one should fight cancer alone, I said, my voice steady, despite the tears in my eyes. And thanks to the Mark Anderson Memorial Foundation, no one will have to. That night, alone in my apartment, I looked at Dad's photo on my desk. I hope I'm making you proud, I whispered. The company was thriving, the foundation was helping people, and somehow, through all the grief, I was still standing. Maybe that's what he'd been preparing me for all along. My phone rang on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The name on the screen made my heart skip, Mom. After 9 years of silence, she was calling me. Rachel, can you come over? It's important. Her voice sounded different, strained, older. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Walking up to my old house felt surreal. Mom opened the door, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged dramatically, her face lined with pain. Steve hovered behind her, and there was Lisa, now 19, watching me with curious eyes. In the living room, nothing had changed, same furniture, same photos of Lisa everywhere. Mom lowered herself carefully into her chair, wincing. I need surgery, she said without preamble. Several surgeries, actually. My joints are deteriorating. Without treatment, I could end up immobile. She paused, wringing her hands. I heard about your inheritance from Mark. About the company, the properties. There it was, the real reason for the reunion. We can't afford the surgeries, Steve added, his pride clearly battling with desperation. The insurance won't cover enough. I studied my mother's face, the same face that had dismissed me, forgotten me, ignored me for years. The same woman who couldn't even attend my father's funeral. But underneath all that history, she was still my mother. I'll cover the medical bills, I heard myself say. Mom burst into tears, pulling me into an awkward hug, our first in years. Stay for dinner, she insisted. We have so much catching up to do. Dinner was a strange affair. Between bites, Mom and Steve peppered me with questions. So, how many properties did Mark leave you exactly? Is the company doing well? Are you selling any of the assets? I deflected each question with practiced ease. The estate is quite complicated, I'd say, where everything's in trusts and legal arrangements. Lisa watched this dance with sharp eyes, eerily similar to how I used to watch Mom and Steve's late-night conversations through the years. As I drove home that night, I wondered if I'd made the right decision. I had the means to help, and despite everything, some small part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The next day, I contacted the hospital to arrange payment for Mom's surgeries. Whatever happened next, at least I knew I'd done what Dad would have wanted, being better than the hurt I'd been given. The surgeries were successful. I paid each medical bill without question, and within months, Mom was walking normally again. That's when the invitations started coming. "Rachel, come for Sunday dinner." "Rachel, we're having a barbecue." "Rachel, Lisa misses you." Each visit felt like walking on eggshells. Mom would reminisce about my childhood, conveniently editing out the painful parts. Steve would ask casual questions about Dad's company. Lisa would watch me with a mixture of expectation and something else I couldn't quite identify. "We're finally a family again," Mom would say, reaching for my hand across the table. But I noticed how her eyes never quite met mine when she said it. When the invitation came for Lisa's 20th birthday party, I decided to make an effort. I bought her the latest iPhone, top model, all the bells and whistles. Maybe it was an attempt to bridge the gap between us, or maybe I just wanted to give her something I knew she'd like. The party was a small affair, just the four of us. No friends, no other relatives. Mom had insisted on keeping it intimate, though now I understood why. Lisa unwrapped the iPhone with barely concealed disappointment. "Oh, thanks," she said flatly, setting it aside without even opening the box. She kept glancing at Mom, as if waiting for something. Then came dinner, and Mom cleared her throat in that way I remembered all too well from childhood, the sound that always preceded something unpleasant. "Rachel, sweetheart," she began, her voice honey-sweet. "The phone is lovely, but we were thinking you could give Lisa something more substantial." I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" "Well," Mom continued, sharing a look with Steve, "we know your father left you several properties. And Lisa's graduating from college soon. Wouldn't it be nice if she had her own place? You have so many apartments, surely you could spare one for your sister?" The room went silent. Steve stared intently at his plate, while Lisa leaned forward, eyes bright with anticipation. This was clearly what they'd been building toward all along. I set down my fork carefully, trying to process what I was hearing. All those family dinners, the sudden interest in my life, the constant invitations, it had all been leading to this moment. "No," I said quietly. "I won't be giving away any of my properties." Mom's sweet expression faltered. "But Rachel, it's your sister. Surely your father would have wanted." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't you dare tell me what my father would have wanted." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Mom's face turned red with anger, while Lisa slumped in her chair, crossing her arms. "How dare you be so selfish?" Mom snapped. "Your sister deserves." "No," I said again, standing up. "What I deserve is to not be used for my money. Not now, not ever." Mom's sweet facade shattered instantly. Her face contorted with rage as she slammed her hands on the table, making the dishes rattle. "You ungrateful little bitch," she screamed. "After everything we've done for you. You're just like your father, selfish and heartless." Lisa shrank back in her chair while Steve stood up, looming over the table. But I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. "Everything you've done for me?" I shot back, standing my ground. "Like throwing me out at 18 the moment Dad's alimony check stopped coming? Like treating me like an unwanted houseguest in my own home? You were never part of this family," Mom shrieked. "You were always in the way, always causing problems. And now you have all this money and won't help your own sister?" She lunged forward, hand raised to strike me. I caught her wrist midair. "Touch me," I said quietly, "and I'll go straight to the police. And then I'll sue you for every penny I spent on your surgeries." The color drained from her face. Steve took a step back. Lisa's mouth hung open. "You wouldn't dare," Mom whispered. "Try me. I'm not that powerless little girl anymore." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, turning back one last time. "Don't call me again. Don't message me. Don't try to contact me through relatives. We're done." That was more than a year ago. Now I sit in my office, looking out over the city as another one of Mom's messages pops up on my phone. They started coming a week after that dinner, first angry, then pleading, then tearfully apologetic. "Please, Rachel, we're family. Your sister misses you. We can work this out." I block each new number, each fake social media account they create. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I'm being too harsh, if I should give them another chance. But then I remember Dad's words from his letter, "Take care of yourself first." So that's what I'm doing. The company is thriving under Marcus's leadership. The Cancer Foundation is helping dozens of families. My life is full of meaning and purpose, built on the foundation of love that Dad provided. Yesterday, I received an invitation to Lisa's graduation. Inside was a handwritten note from Mom, "Please come. We can start over." I dropped it in the shredder without a second thought. Some people say blood is thicker than water, but the family you choose, the bonds you forge through love and trust, those are the ones that truly matter. My name is Carol, and I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from college, and I've got a story to tell you about my house, well, technically, my mother's house. Or it was, until she passed away from intestinal cancer 4 years ago and left it to me. Mom was always the planning type. Even before the cancer diagnosis, she made sure everything was in order. The house was hers free and clear, she'd bought it before she even met my dad, and thank God for that foresight. She made sure I knew about the will, too. "This way you'll always have a home," she told me, her voice steady, despite everything she was going through. Things weren't always this complicated. My parents' marriage lasted 10 years before Dad decided to leave us for another woman. I was 9 when he packed his bags. No drama, no fighting over custody or property, he just left. The only thing he agreed to was paying for my college education. He set up a special account and transferred the entire sum for my future studies right away. I guess that was his version of child support. Dad started a new family pretty quickly. His wife Linda had their daughter shortly after, she's 10 years younger than me. I'd visit sometimes, staying at their rented house, but it never felt right. Linda would be busy with my half-sister, cooing over her latest accomplishment or fixing her hair. Dad was always working, claiming he needed to provide for his family. Funny how I wasn't really included in that category anymore. "Carol, would you like to join us for dinner?" Linda would ask, but her tone always suggested she hoped I'd decline. We kept things cordial though, exchanging birthday cards, holiday greetings, the occasional forced family dinner. It was all very proper and polite, in that uncomfortable way that makes your skin crawl. Mom made good money as a senior accountant, so when the cancer hit, she could focus entirely on treatment. I was 14 when we got the diagnosis. She quit her job immediately to focus on fighting the disease. For 4 years, we lived between hospital visits and treatment sessions. Mom never complained, not once. She just kept fighting, kept planning, kept making sure I would be okay. But cancer doesn't care about plans. I was 18 when she died, just weeks before I was supposed to leave for college in another state. The grief hit me hard, I could barely function. That's when Dad surprised me by actually stepping up. He, Linda, and my half-sister moved in temporarily to help me cope with the loss. I was too numb to question it at the time, too grateful for any support I could get. "We'll help you through this," Dad said, putting his arm around my shoulders. Linda nodded along, trying to look sympathetic while my half-sister explored what was now my house. By the end of summer, I was faced with a dilemma. College was starting in a few weeks, and I had no idea what to do with Mom's house, my house now. I couldn't bear the thought of selling it, but leaving it empty for 4 years didn't seem smart either. That's when Dad came up with his proposal over breakfast one morning. "Carol," he said, pushing his coffee mug aside, "I've been thinking. What if we stayed here? We'd pay all the bills, maintain the place. You wouldn't have to worry about anything while you're at school." I looked at Linda, who was making pancakes at the stove. She turned around and smiled. "It would be good for all of us," she added. Sophie's already enrolled in the local school, and the house would be well taken care of. It made sense. During the 2 months they'd been staying with me, things had been surprisingly okay. Linda had stopped being so distant, and Sophie, my half-sister, had actually started treating me like a real sister instead of some stranger who showed up occasionally. So I agreed. Looking back, it seemed like the perfect solution. I packed up Mom's personal things, keeping what I wanted and storing the rest in the attic. I left for college feeling confident about my decision. Over the next 4 years, I came home during holidays and summer breaks. Those visits were nice, actually. Linda would cook these big welcome home dinners. "I made your favorite lasagna," she'd say, as if she'd always known my favorites. Sophie would drag me to her room to show me her latest artwork or tell me about school drama. During Christmas breaks, we'd all decorate the tree together. Dad would lift Sophie to put the star on top, while Linda and I argued good-naturedly about whether tinsel was tacky or classic. We'd sit around drinking hot chocolate, and sometimes I could almost forget that this wasn't the family I started with. Summer visits were different, longer, more relaxed. Sophie and I would spend afternoons by the community pool, and I'd help her with her summer reading. Linda would invite me to her book club meetings, and we'd actually have fun dissecting whatever romance novel they'd chosen that month. "Your sister's so good with Sophie," I overheard Linda telling Dad one evening. "It's nice having her home." That made me feel warm inside, like maybe we really had become a proper family. I called regularly during semesters, weekly chats with Dad about my classes, catching up with Linda about house maintenance, "The roses you planted are blooming beautifully, Carol," and FaceTime sessions with Sophie, who kept me updated on her middle school adventures. Everything seemed perfect. We'd created this strange but functional family dynamic, built on the foundation of my mother's house. I never imagined it could all fall apart so quickly, but I guess that's the thing about houses. No matter how solid the foundation, you never know what's going on behind the walls. Finally, at 22, with my degree in hand and a job lined up back home, I was ready to start the next chapter of my life. I'd already accepted a position at Marshall & Brooks Financial in my hometown. They'd interviewed me via Zoom and offered me the job right away. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Or so I thought. The taxi dropped me off in front of my house on a sunny June afternoon. I stood there for a moment, taking in the familiar sight. Mom's rose bushes were in full bloom, though they looked different from how she used to maintain them. The lawn was neatly trimmed, and new curtains hung in the windows. Little changes that had happened while I was away at college. Wheeling my suitcases up the front walk, I reached for my keys with a smile, already imagining sleeping in my old room tonight. But when I tried to unlock the door, something was wrong. The key wouldn't turn. I tried again, thinking maybe I was just tired from the journey, but no, the key definitely didn't fit. "What the hell?" I muttered, trying the key again before finally giving up and knocking on the door, loudly, since it was the middle of the day and they might be watching TV. Linda opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise. She was wearing an apron and had flour on her hands, like she'd been baking. "Carol, what are you doing here?" I wheeled my suitcase inside, noticing Dad and Sophie in the living room, both looking equally startled by my appearance. Sophie was sprawled on the couch with her phone, while Dad sat in his favorite armchair, Mom's old armchair, actually, reading something on his tablet. "What do you mean? I live here," I said, looking around at what seemed like subtle changes to the living room decor. "Why were the locks changed?" Dad scratched his neck, that nervous habit he's had since forever. "Oh, that. Yeah, I changed them last month. For safety, you know. There were some break-ins in the neighborhood." "You could have told me," I said, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "Or sent me a new key. I mean, this is my house." "We weren't expecting you," Linda said carefully, her arms crossed over her chest. She'd wiped the flour off her hands and was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Why not? I graduated last week. I told you guys I was coming home to start my new job." I looked between them, feeling increasingly uneasy. Something was off about their reactions. Sophie had even put down her phone and was watching the scene unfold with an odd expression. "Carol," Dad cut in suddenly, standing up. "Can we talk in the office for a minute?" I followed him into Mom's old office, my office now, technically. The room still had Mom's degrees on the wall, her collection of financial reference books on the shelves. He closed the door behind us, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he turned to face me. "Listen, honey," he started, his voice low. "There's something you need to know. Linda, well, she thinks this house belongs to me." I stared at him, not comprehending. "What?" "I told her it was my house," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "That I gave it to your mother and you out of kindness after the divorce, and that after your mom passed, it reverted to me. She thinks you've just been living here because I allowed it." I must have stood there gaping at Dad for a full minute before finding my voice again. My first instinct was to storm out of the office and tell Linda everything. Now I understood her surprised look when I showed up. In her mind, I was just some freeloader trying to crash in their house. "I have to tell her the truth," I said, moving toward the door, but Dad caught my arm. "Please, Carol," he begged, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just give me a little time. I'll find us a new place to live, I promise. I just need to figure out how to tell her without destroying our marriage." "Destroying your marriage?" I hissed. "What about what you're doing to me?" He pulled a set of keys from his pocket, holding them out like a peace offering. "These are for the new locks. Please, sweetheart. Just a few weeks, that's all I'm asking. Let me handle this my way." I took the keys, feeling sick to my stomach. "Fine," I said finally. "But this is insane, Dad. You know that, right?" He nodded, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, honey. I'll make this right, I promise." But things started going downhill immediately. At dinner that night, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Linda kept shooting me these looks across the table, all her previous warmth gone. The woman who used to bake my favorite cookies and invite me to book club now acted like I was a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. "More potatoes, Dad?" Sophie asked, completely oblivious to the tension. "Would anyone mind if I redecorated the living room?" Linda asked suddenly, not looking at me. "The current setup is a bit dated." I gripped my fork tighter, knowing she was talking about Mom's furniture arrangement. Dad coughed awkwardly and changed the subject. The next morning, I was making coffee when Linda cornered me in the kitchen. She was still in her robe, hair uncombed, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Carol," she said, leaning against the counter. "I think we need to talk about your plans." "My plans?" "Yes. When are you planning to look for your own place?" She asked it casually, like she was asking about the weather. "Now that you have a job lined up, you should start thinking about moving out. You're a grown woman now, after all." I took a slow sip of coffee, counting to 10 in my head. "Actually, I've talked to Dad about staying here for now. He's fine with it." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. Instead, she just turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and a growing sense of dread about how this was all going to play out. The next 2 weeks were like living in a hostile environment. Linda's attitude shifted from cold to downright passive-aggressive. She'd accidentally wash my clothes with colors that would bleed, claiming she forgot which laundry basket was mine. She'd cook family dinners, but conveniently make just enough for 3 people, acting surprised when I came to the table. When I tried to watch TV in the living room, she'd suddenly need to vacuum right there. If I was using the kitchen to make breakfast, she'd barge in and start reorganizing the cabinets, muttering about how some people never learn to keep things tidy. She even moved my mother's favorite vase from its spot on the mantel to some corner shelf, claiming it didn't match her new decorating vision. The worst part was watching Sophie follow her mother's lead. My half-sister, who just weeks ago had been sending me memes and calling me for advice about boys, now rolled her eyes whenever I entered a room. She started calling me that girl when talking about me to her friends on the phone, loud enough for me to hear. Despite the tension at home, my professional life was taking off. I visited Marshall and Brooks Financial, where they showed me my future workspace, a nice corner desk with a view of downtown. My future colleagues seemed friendly and welcoming, especially Sarah from the risk assessment team, who offered to take me to lunch. "When do you start?" she asked over sandwiches. 2 weeks, I replied. Just enough time to settle in at home. That evening at dinner, I shared my start date with the family, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "They showed me my office today. I start in 2 weeks." Linda's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down with exaggerated care. "Well, isn't that wonderful? Once you get your first paycheck, you can start looking for your own apartment. I know of some nice complexes across town, very affordable for young professionals." I caught Dad's pleading look across the table. His eyes seemed to beg me to keep quiet, to maintain his lie just a little longer. I stabbed at my peas and said nothing. To avoid the tension at home, I started reconnecting with old high school friends. Katie and Jessica were still in town, and we'd meet for coffee or shopping trips, falling back into our old rhythms as if no time had passed. But coming home was always uncomfortable. I'd walk in and hear hushed conversations from the kitchen or living room that would stop abruptly when I appeared. Dad and Linda would spring apart like guilty teenagers, papers would be hastily shoved into drawers, and fake smiles would plaster themselves across their faces. Saturday morning, I woke up to an unusually quiet house. No sound of Linda's weekend meal prep in the kitchen, no Sophie's music blasting from her room, no Dad watching sports on TV. The silence felt wrong somehow, like the calm before a storm. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, checking each room as I went. The kitchen was spotless, not just clean, but unused since the night before. The living room was empty, the throw pillows perfectly arranged on the couch. Sophie's boots, usually cluttering the entryway, were gone. Even Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. I checked my phone, no messages, no notes about where everyone had gone. My first thought was that maybe they'd gone out for breakfast, but something felt off. They never went out for breakfast without at least leaving a note. Even during these tense weeks, they'd maintained that basic courtesy. I tried calling Dad first, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Weird. I tried a few more times with the same result, that automated voice telling me the person I was trying to reach was unavailable. A knot started forming in my stomach. Finally, I called Linda. She picked up on the 4th ring, just as I was about to hang up. "What do you want?" Her voice was sharp, hostile in a way I'd never heard before. In the background, I could hear waves and what sounded like tropical music. "I just wanted to know where everyone is," I said, caught off guard by her tone. I woke up and the house was empty. She laughed, an ugly, mean sound that made my stomach clench. "Oh, didn't we tell you? We're in the Maldives. First-class flights, luxury resort, the works. We didn't mention it because, frankly, we didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you too. Not that you'd know anything about paying for things yourself." "What? I wouldn't." "Save it," she cut me off. "I'm sick of this whole situation. You're nothing but a lazy freeloader, living in our house like you own the place. Your father might put up with it, but I'm done. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a grown woman living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities?" My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mother's chairs, actually, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. "Linda, No, you listen to me," she snarled. "Your father never loved you, you were just an obligation. He already wasted enough money on your college education, and now you're squatting in our house like some entitled princess. Well, I've had enough. Did you think you could just live here forever? Mooching off us while we work hard to maintain this home?" I could hear Sophie giggling in the background, and Dad's muffled voice saying something I couldn't make out. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. When we get back, she continued, her voice dripping with venom, I want you gone. Do you understand me? Pack your things and get out of our house. If you're still there when we return, I'll throw you out myself. And trust me, I won't be gentle about it. I don't care where you go, live on the street for all I care. You're not our problem anymore. And don't bother trying to call your father. He agrees with me, he's just too weak to tell you himself. We've already blocked your number. Have a nice life, Carol, or don't. I really couldn't care less. The line went dead. I sat in that kitchen for what felt like hours, fury slowly replacing shock. They were living in my house, the house my mother had worked for, had left to me, and they had the nerve to call me a freeloader? To try to throw me out? Well, I'd had enough of playing along with Dad's lies. I blocked their numbers on my phone, my hands still shaking, but now with anger rather than hurt. Then I started methodically going through the house, gathering their belongings. Linda's expensive clothes, Sophie's school stuff, Dad's golf clubs, everything went into boxes and suitcases. I worked through the entire Saturday, fueled by rage and bitter disappointment. By Sunday morning, I had their life packed up and stacked in the garage. I found a 24-hour locksmith who could come right away. He worked quickly, replacing the locks on all the doors. It cost a small fortune, but it was worth every penny. When he finished, I handed him my credit card, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as I clutched the new keys. Monday morning, I started my new job at Marshall & Brooks. For 2 weeks, I threw myself into work, learning the ropes, making new friends, trying not to think about the confrontation I knew was coming. I kept their stuff in the garage, but I rearranged the house back to how Mom had it, removing every trace of Linda's decorating vision. Then came that Friday. I pulled into the driveway after work to find them standing there, Dad looking nervous, Linda red-faced with fury, and Sophie hanging back with a scowl. They must have just gotten back from their vacation, their suitcases were still in their rental car. Linda started screaming before I even got out of my car. How dare you change our locks? How dare you lock us out of our own house? I walked calmly past them to unlock the door. Linda followed, still yelling. We're calling the police. This is breaking and entering. This is our house. I turned to face them, something inside me finally snapping. No, Linda, it's not your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother bought it before she even met Dad. She left it to me in her will. The only reason you've been living here is because I allowed it, temporarily. Linda laughed, but it was an uncertain sound. She looked at Dad. Tell her she's lying. Tell her this is our house. Dad wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. He just shrugged, his shoulders slumping. She's telling the truth. The house, it was always hers. I watched as the truth sank in, as Linda's face transformed from rage to calculation in a matter of seconds. Her entire demeanor changed, like a switch had been flipped. Oh, Carol, sweetheart, she said, forcing a laugh. You didn't think I was serious on the phone, did you? I was just joking. You know how I can get sometimes, all that sun and those tropical cocktails went to my head. Stop it, I said quietly, but she kept going. We're family, remember all those nice times we had? The book club meetings, the holiday dinners? We can have that again. She took a step toward me, arms outstretched like she was going to hug me. Dad jumped in then, his voice thick with emotion. Princess, I'm so sorry. I know I handled this all wrong, but I love you. You're my daughter. Please, can't we work this out? I looked at him, really looked at him. The father who left when I was 9. Who paid for my education but missed my life. Who lied about my house, my inheritance, my mother's legacy. Work what out, Dad? The fact that you lied to your wife about owning my house? Or the fact that you stood by while she planned to throw me out of it? Linda turned back to me with that fake smile. Carol, let's be reasonable. We can all live here together. We'll pay rent. No, I said firmly. We can't. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave. That's when Linda's mask cracked again. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, you'd throw your own family out on the street? I felt oddly calm as I replied, you just spent what, $10,000 on a luxury vacation you deliberately hid from me? Pretty sure you can afford an apartment. Carol, please, Dad tried again, reaching for my arm. I know I messed up, but... No, I cut him off. You didn't mess up, you lied. 4 years. You let your wife believe she owned my mother's house. You watched her try to redecorate it, rearrange it, erase every trace of Mom. And when she planned to throw me out, you said nothing. I was going to tell her the truth, he protested. When? After I was gone? After she'd finished making my house her home? I shook my head. I'm done. Get your things and get out. I walked inside and closed the door, ignoring Linda's screams about ingratitude and cruelty. Through the window, I watched them loading boxes from the garage into their rental car. Linda was still yelling, her face red with fury. Sophie was crying. Dad just looked defeated. It took them 3 trips to get everything. As they loaded the last box, Dad tried one more time, knocking on the door. I didn't open it. They finally left as the sun was setting. The next day, Dad tried calling from a new number. Carol, please, he begged. We can fix this. No, Dad, we can't, I said. Linda made it very clear how you all really feel about me. A freeloader? An obligation? Someone you never loved? Maybe those were her words, but your silence said enough. That was 2 months ago. I still live in Mom's house, my house. I've repainted the walls, planted new roses in the garden, made it mine again. Sometimes I think about them, wonder where they ended up. But mostly, I think about Mom, and how she made sure I'd always have a home, no matter what. Dad still tries to call sometimes, from different numbers. I don't pick up anymore. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. The funny thing is, I'm happier now. My job is going well, I've made new friends at work, and for the first time since Mom died, I feel at peace in this house. Sometimes healing means letting go, of people, of lies, of the fairy tale of family you wanted to believe in.